Hi, everybody. Welcome to NewsNite for Friday, March 23rd. Great to have you with us. A very balmy week, hopefully some hot conversation. Did CSB do enough when it received calls about a baby in danger? We'll talk about the latest case involving the death of a toddler. And the dangers of Facebook, both good and bad for our local folks, rear their ugly heads again. Those stories and more next on NewsNite. Lot to get to this week, so let's go ahead and meet our panel. Great to have freelance journalist and contributor Jody Miller here with us this week. Phil Trexler joins us this week from the Akron Beacon-Journal. And always great to see Bob Dyer here this week as well from the Akron Beacon-Journal. Headlines across the state after a toddler is found dead in a meth house. 4 people have been arrested, including the mother of the child, and much has been made now about 2 women calling CSB saying this child was in danger. And CSB responding saying they did all they could, and yet this toddler still ends up dead. Is there anything that needs to change in the system when there's danger being put out there about kids to learn from this?
There's got to be more proof. I think that's the key in any case of this sort, and that's what CSB will tell you. Their employees, their caseworkers, are trained. Okay, they're trained to watch for warning signs. They're trained to watch for signs of abuse or signs of neglect. They went to the home. They investigated the allegations. And if they don't see enough evidence to indicate that the child should be removed from the home, they're helpless. They can't do anything. So it's one thing to have allegations, but the system works as it does to protect everybody involved. Unfortunately, it did not protect this child.
And these are very serious matters, too. I mean, you're talking about taking someone's child from their home. Okay, you need a lot of evidence of abuse there to do that. Frequently, CSB will err on the side of caution. But in this case, they didn't see the evidence. It's a very difficult situation where they have to assess it, and they've been under criticism in the past for not failing to remove kids. And no one's more cognizant of the fact that the children need protecting than CSB, and they're not going to turn their back on a kid who needs help. That being said, you just hope and pray that these things don't happen, but they're going to happen, and there's going to be mistakes made.
Well, and the other thing to remember, too, is we still have not had a ruling from the medical examiner of why the child died, and that's due out, I believe, the beginning of next week. Mm-hmm. So that may change, the whole complexion of the case, because the 4 individuals who were in the home where the meth lab was discovered have been charged with the drug-related charges, but there could be more charges based on what Lisa Kohler comes up with. Being
held with a $1 million bond, I think they expect a charge is going to come with babies dying, but Bob, these cases always just rock the community hard.
It's so subjective. I mean, I have some sympathy for children's services. You're trying to gauge when lousy parenting turns into criminal parenting, and as Phil said, you don't just cavalierly yank some kid out of his home. But there's some cases where you really scratch your head. I mean, the woman whose house they lived in for a while, 2 weeks ahead of time, called up and said, "Hey, we got a real bad situation here." And they couldn't pin it down, which is alarming. But, I mean, it's easy to second guess. It's like Monday morning quarterbacking. But you look at some of the facts in this case, you got to wonder.
I think you'd be surprised, though, too. And, there's a lot of kids who are living in poverty in Akron and all over. And I think we don't see that on a daily basis. But I know there's a lot of folks who do, CSB being one of them. And, the threshold for taking a kid out, I think, is probably been lower just because of the standard of living that some families are accustomed to. I think we would be stunned if we walked into some houses and saw how our children are being raised. It's heartbreaking to hear the stories.
I've heard CSB mention that 1 in 7 children in Summit County is involved with CSB. That's a lot. Mm-hmm. And to take them all, they argue, where would you put them, even temporarily?
Well, and not only that, but you also have situations that have happened in the past, and having spoken in the past with CSB workers, there are times when there will be allegations made against someone that are made not to protect the child, but made to get back at an individual for some reason or other. And that's another part of this equation that CSB workers always have to balance. And there's been some criticism that maybe whoever investigated at this home should have realized there was a meth lab there. Well, you can't, I don't think, have access to the entire home to walk around and see this kind of stuff. So I think that's an unfair allegation. And both of my colleagues here are absolutely right. There is nothing in the world that CSB would like to do more than to prevent this kind of tragedy. but they are hamstrung in terms of what, in fact, they can do. If they don't have the solid evidence that there is neglect or abuse, they cannot do anything.
And you're right. I think there's a lot, I don't know what the numbers are, but there are frequently a lot of false allegations that are made in parenting, divorces, girlfriends, boyfriends being mad at each other and calling CSB. I mean, that's the first call a lot of times that they make, and a lot of times they're false. And you can't just go in there, as you said, and just pull everybody out. It's not possible.
Well, I can only imagine what it was like for the police officers the first to arrive, the paramedics the first to arrive, to find an unresponsive toddler in a meth lab. But as we look at the police, Phil, there's news this week, even today, that they could be moving toward a new contract and making major steps without it creating so much controversy.
Right. This is a tweaking of the contract. The department's undergoing a reorganization. Chief Nice is having to balance a smaller, depleted force of about 400 officers and trying to still perform specialty units and gangs and whatnot. And so there. Some things that the chief can't do on his own. He has to go through a negotiation, a tweaking of the contract. The most important thing to the officers is the fact that they get to keep their 4-day, 2-day work
Explain
schedule.
what that is.
They work 4 days and they get 2 days off in a row, which is not what they had in the past. They never got 2 days off in a row, and it's important to the officers that they get it. They love the plan. They enjoy the 2 days off, and they're a little angry, I think, because the city has used that as a bargaining tool in these contract reopeners. Now, this is not the full-fledged contract. Those negotiations don't start until the fall, but. And talking to Paul Helinski, they're not talking exactly the terms. Those will come out later on today. But it didn't seem as though it was amicable negotiations. And
they used to get 3 days off, or 3 days and then 1 day off.
Yeah, it was a staggered work schedule. It doesn't give you much of a break there. You just have 1 day off, and most of us have 2 days off in a row. Is
it important though to give them something that they can be happy about here?
Oh, I think it is, absolutely, especially when the force is as depleted as it is in terms of manpower. These are officers who. All of us would admit the kinds of jobs that they deal with, and whether they're on the street or in the office, their work is extraordinarily labor-intensive, emotionally intensive, and to give them 2 days off, I think, is great. But the other point I wanted to make with respect to this is, number one, I was gratified to see your report, or the report in the Beacon, of giving the new chief, Chief Nice, the flexibility now to make some changes on his own. But I was also gratified because it was one of the first times that I can remember in the recent past when Paul Helinski was a little more subdued, was a little more willing to give a little bit and be on board with this kind of thing. And I'm hoping it ushers in a new kind of wonderful relationship that works. Obviously,
not sure it's going to be wonderful.
Well, no, but obviously, I think there's some symbiotic relationship here between maybe Chief Nice and Paul Helinski, and maybe they've got a little more respect for each other, because I was not really glad to see Paul say what he did.
And I think you're right in that regard. I think the union and the police chief are getting along a lot better than folks thought that they would. But you got to remember, a month or so ago when they were having these contract reopeners, the city slammed them with a unfair labor practice complaint. Right after they had these amicable talks.
But that's the city. It's not the chief.
Correct.
And his
no,
officers.
but correct. Exactly. And it's nice to know that the chief and the union are apparently getting along better. They were great talks a month ago, and that's why it was so stunning to the union that they were hit with this unfair labor complaint.
Bob, put the perspective on Chief Nice being between Mayor Plisquellic and Paul Helinski, with the history that we've seen, though, to be in that position.
It's not pretty. The mayor and the police just have an incredible history that goes way back, and it's just not pretty at all. So I think it's good that he's from the outside. He doesn't have all the baggage that some other people might have if they were promoted from within. And he's been a big-time law enforcement person, so maybe it's the right guy at the right time.
Yeah, it was a tough situation he was put into, though. First chief taken from outside the department. Yeah. Right, the men and women of the police force were not happy about that decision. Yeah. So, that puts Jim Nice in a really tough bind there, keeping Plisquellic happy, keeping the union happy, while all of a sudden being the first chief from outside the department. That's a lot on a plate.
You talk about being between a rock and a hard place. Consider Plisquellic the hard place and Helinski the rock, and that's exactly where James Nice is. But he seems to be handling it well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Couldn't Plisquellic be the rock and...
Well,
as we talk about what he has done, I want to talk about what he hasn't done as we move the conversation now to NewsNite.net.
For more NewsNite content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
Some say it's for good, others say it's for evil. Again, Facebook rears its ugly head this week in numerous stories, and Phil will begin with the one that you put out there on a Facebook photo, but not the kind of profile pic anybody really wants to be proud of.
Well, and not one much of the media can do anything with, because the guy's sticking his middle finger out at the camera there when he's trying to, it happened in Bath Township. An 18-year-old kid was arrested eventually after being in a park and drinking and whatnot. So he decided to grab his privates and display the middle finger during his booking photo. So I think, the Bath Township Police Department said, fine, here you go, we'll throw it on our Facebook page. And they did, and it got a lot of attention. And I talked to the kid, and he was kind of embarrassed that this all happened, and he apologized. And that same day, Bath Township took it down. I think they felt a little remorse there for outing the kid.
Do they do that with all of their booking photos?
No, they don't. They don't do that. And there's a great deal of debate as to whether police departments should be putting their arrests online there. I know Alliance Police was putting every little arrest they made on their Facebook page. Now they've backed off. Brimfield Police, David Oliver decided he's not going to put arrests on their Facebook page because people aren't convicted. So it just goes to show you the social media aspect of what's going on with it. The police department's having their own Facebook pages and putting out what the work that they do on a daily basis.
Does teen learn a hard lesson about going to have to pay for this the rest of your life?
Pretty much, yeah. Once it's out there, it's out there. You can be sure somebody has copies of it, which will keep circulating. I don't have a big problem with it. I mean, the kid got arrested. He's over 18. Mm-hmm. He did a stupid thing, and here it is.
Yeah, but it wasn't just that. It was and I don't think that the Bath Police would have posted it on Facebook, except for the extenuating circumstances where he was found in the park, if I understand correctly. Mm-hmm. They drove him home. Mm-hmm. He said he was by himself. He went back with his father to the police department, or went back to the park,
to look for the other kids.
To look for the other kids. The Bath Police then arrested him, and he was disruptive as could be when they took him in. Mm-hmm. He was aggressive. He was obnoxious. He just thought he was being real cute, and it was one of these things where the officers could have reacted in a very bad way, given the fact that this young man was not exhibiting the kind of behavior that you would normally expect. You see somebody who's 18 years old, and they're getting their mugshot taken, and normally they're scared to death. This is a kid who was just,
But I think most people understand if the police are going to publish a burglar's photo or a rapist photo, because there may be other cases out there. It's unlikely this kid was wanted in anything else based on the circumstance we knew. So should police be putting those type of photos up on Facebook?
According to what I read, what they did is that they wanted people to understand and other kids to understand that they were going to be patrolling this park where this kind of activity was going on.
Do you buy that?
I'm not sure I'd buy it. I do know that Bath Police and Chief McNeely have been very forward and very progressive thinking in terms of social media. I mean, they were one of the first departments to have a Facebook page, I believe. He was one of the first people who ever announced Twitter when Twitter first came out. Mm-hmm. So he's very progressive in that regard, and you might see more of this as we come down the line.
And he's also a finalist for the police chief's job in Bismarck, North Dakota.
I know.
That's the next logical city after Bath, from Canal Fulton to Bath to Bismarck. So it may send a message to other teens, young adults, learn a lesson from this kid. But Bob, you wrote about somebody who learned a lesson about Facebook as well, as far as sharing your emotions.
This was interesting. I wrote this column about 10 days ago, and it went out on the McClatchy Wire, and it was picked up all over the country. I think because, there's so many people on Facebook. What is it, 350 million or something at this point? This woman who lives in Randolph, she's been married for 13 years. She and her husband in their mid-30s. They always joke around on Facebook. One night she thought he was cleaning the coffee pot with vinegar, which is a smell she detests. So she sat down on her Facebook page and said, "I'm going to murder my stanky husband." And the subsequent comments from friends were, "Well, I know somebody who can do it," or "No, don't do that, just quit washing his laundry and cooking his food." In the context of the page, it was pretty clear it was a joke. One of her 470 friends called the Portage County Sheriff and said, "Hey, this woman's threatening to murder her husband." So 2 days later, there's a knock on the door. A deputy comes in, and the guy is sitting in the couch asleep with their 17-month-old kid on his lap. He worked a late shift, like a midnight shift. So the deputy walks in and says, "Is that his name?" And she said, "Yeah, why?" The woman thought that he did something wrong, because she knew she hadn't done anything wrong. So the woman said, "Shall I wake him up to show you he's alive?" And she said, "No, I can hear him snoring." But there's two sides to it. I mean, this is in the wake, maybe a week earlier, of the Chardon shootings, where the kid went online and posted pictures of himself on Facebook saying, "I'm going to raise hell." And it was a private Facebook setting, so the deputies couldn't go online and see the context of the comments. So for all they know, it's a legitimate threat. So to me, it was very interesting that this is, well, I compared it to, in the old days in the airport, we could sit there in the 1960s and go, "Hey, I'm going to hijack this plane." You can't do that anymore. Right. And I think Facebook is going in the same direction. When you put stuff up there like that, you stand a chance of getting in some hot water. And the sheriff said there are cases where he's going to charge people with that, even if they're joking around.
Well, I've got to be careful. And you picked up on something also in regards to Facebook this week in regards to employment.
Well, yes, there are reports out this week that there are cases of job interviews where a candidate will go in and the prospective employer will ask them for their Facebook page and their password. And you know, there are people who are so desperate for a job that they will in fact turn over that kind of information. And the reports are that it's an egregious invasion of privacy.
I'm out the door if they ask me.
Exactly. I talked to one of my sons last night, and he said the same thing. You know, any employer who needs my password, I don't want to work for that company. You know, but it goes to the way that our society has changed and the way that social media has become so much a part of our lives. Mm-hmm. Because there are employers who literally will go to a Facebook page if they have access to it, and at least look through and see your photographs, see who you've been friends with, see some of the postings you've done. Because the kinds of things you put up there can impact your life for years to come.
I don't even think the FBI asks for your password.
They probably don't need it. They probably already have it. The fact is, you're posting something on Facebook, there's no invasion of privacy. You're throwing yourself out there. It's amazing what people put on Facebook.
Yeah, but if you're giving somebody your password, that's a huge difference.
It's all public. It's all out there.
Your password's not public.
No, but everything you post on Facebook is public.
Yeah. No, there's parts of it you can hide.
It's just another example. Folks need to be more diligent about what they post.
But with your password, they can read your messages, for one.
Yeah, why don't you just give them the keys to your house and say, "Come on in and take a look." I'm not.
If I need the job bad enough, maybe I would.
Well, and that's the dilemma that people are put under. You know, if I need this job, do I give them my password and let them come into my life because I'm so desperate?
Well, based on these three examples, is Facebook for good or is Facebook for evil?
You know what? It's an individual kind of thing. You just have to be careful because whatever you put on there might come back and bite you in the butt.
Might show up in the newspaper.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
looked years ago and just to see what you could find.
I did. Well, back when MySpace was still a bigger deal than Facebook by a mile, I went online and looked at area high school kids and went through and wrote about some of the things they'd posted on there, which were really amazing. Just incredible stuff that you would not want anybody to know other than peers. And after I wrote about it, I got all this feedback from kids saying, "You invaded my privacy." I said, there's a reason they call us the World Wide Web. I mean, you put it on there, and
there you go. That's right to my point. Thanks.
But I'm not asking for their password.
Wow.
That's a big difference.
What's your password, Phil?
What's your pet's name?
Cody.
Your son's birthday?
Oh,
November 12th.
Great stuff for us to talk about and continue to talk about right here on NewsNite.
On NewsNite.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNite.net.
For months now, we've been talking about the controversy of Walmart and Sam's Club moving from Fair Lawn across into Copley and the changes that will be out there to the traffic patterns. And Jody, now we're just a matter of weeks now from Rothrock Road really seeing a barrier, and people are going to be affected and feel this quickly.
They really are. This week it was announced that Fair Lawn is going to go ahead, and I think it's on April 10th, they will erect a permanent barrier on Rothrock Road. Now, right now, as Phil reminded me, there is a barrier up, but you can get around on either side of it at this point. But in April, they're going to put that barrier up because their contention is that it's, if you put 300,000 square feet of commercial business on a two-lane road, most of the people who are going to come either to or from that a lot of them are going to go through a neighborhood that's in Fairlawn, and they need, and the residents in that neighborhood want the city to act to protect their property values and to keep people from going through just a regular neighborhood road. So Fairlawn has said that they were going to do this, and now they've got a date for it, and we shall see what happens.
Does it make it more difficult for people to get to these eventual stores?
Oh, yeah, absolutely it makes it more difficult because all of the traffic essentially is going to have to come from Route 18. It's going to have to come from the north. And that's Montrose, and that's a bottleneck by itself.
Nightmare.
Yeah.
You go down there, and I don't go there in December. It is so
No,
bad in
no, you're
Montrose.
right.
I mean, I can't conceive of a gigantic Walmart with gas pumps. How much more traffic that's going to bring to the area.
I thought it was interesting at the meeting they held this week that the Copley fire chief, the Copley police chief, were basically imploring Mayor Roth out in Fairlawn to rethink this thing and not to do it. And it was also interesting, I thought that Copley's attorney, Irv Sugarman, came out and said, look, why are you doing this now? Yeah. We're not going to break ground. This thing's not going to be up for 2 years. Why are you doing it now? And then Roth's coming back saying that's the first he's ever heard of that. There's plenty of lawsuits that are out there pending too, and this thing is going to be going on for years. And there is no store, there is no ground has not been moved, dirt hasn't been shoveled, and there is a lot of time left before this closure has to take place, and
legal rulings. I mean, when you said permanent barrier, not necessarily.
Yeah.
They could overturn this in court, and then they spend all that money for their barrier.
From my perspective, though, I think it's the kind of thing where Fairlawn, I think, is using this as perhaps the biggest bargaining chip they have.
That's all they have.
Yeah, exactly. It's all they have.
And the mayor will deny that. He'll say that this is not about this is not a vendetta against Copley for stealing his Walmart. But I mean, the appearance is that that's a big part of it.
But I don't think it's that at all. I think his concern and his residents' concern is there have yet to be definitive traffic studies about what this is going to do and how, in fact, Walmart or the developer is going to fix the traffic problem that is going to be inevitable when this goes up.
But none of these homes are century homes. These are not homes that have been there for all these years. Now suddenly a Taco Bell moves across the street. Playing devil's advocate, shouldn't these people, when they built these nice homes out there, and I don't want 300,000 cars coming in front of my house, but didn't they know where they were building?
They knew the zoning. They should have. If they did their homework, they knew what the zoning was.
So how are people supposed to feel compassionate toward them when they kind of knew where they were building?
You can feel compassion toward, like you said, you lived there for 10 years and life is good, and all of a sudden they're going to do what in my backyard? I mean, there's...
And I could see some sort of barriers there where it goes into that development. But Rothrock, if you take Rothrock all the way around to Cleveland, Massillon, you don't really go through a neighborhood. I mean, that's kind of a conduit to get to Cleveland Massillon Road. It's the concern is that development that lies to the east of Rothrock. And I can see, erecting some barriers there so you don't be cutting through those neighborhoods. But, I'm not sure you need one at Rothrock. And, the appearance is that this is a vendetta, and there's more evidence to support that than otherwise.
The Rothrock Cleveland-Massillon Road intersection could get really ugly if you let Walmart traffic through there. Right. That's already
and there's
tough.
A signal there.
And it's not that far from the off-ramp, which would jam things up from 77.
But the interesting thing, though, to your point, Eric, is the fact that, yes, you might build a home in a development, and the natural inclination is you see this empty, vacant lot that, is all wooded and it's beautiful, and you never really look into how it is zoned. And this is a case where you've got Copley and Fairlawn butting up right there at Rothrock Road. Half of the road is in Copley, half of it is in Fairlawn. And there was no definitive, and I've argued about this before, no definitive county-wide land use plan that could make sure that this kind of situation doesn't develop.
Before you build a home, you would think these are questions you want to ask.
Let the buyer beware. I mean, that's part of your research.
Your
should
due
be
diligence,
every time.
absolutely, it should be.
Bob, this place is something you wrote about years ago, and that is people build their homes right next to the highway, then complain it's so loud they want the state to put up, or the county or the city, whoever, to put up sound walls to protect the integrity of you built next to the highway.
Yeah, I've written many times about the travesty in Fairlawn, where we're now on our third sound wall, at more than $1 million a mile. These people built long after the freeway went through. The developer didn't even put a mound up. I mean, he just let us pay for the whole thing. The last time I wrote about it, I actually checked the property sales. The average sale of the last three was $350,000. So these people are building brand new houses, 100 yards from a freeway. You don't expect noise? I mean, I shouldn't pay for that.
The fact is they don't work anyway.
That's true. Yeah, that's what I've been
sound
pointing
walls,
out
you mean?
That's what I've been pointing out
The
for
sound walls don't work?
15 years.
It's like the sound echoes off them.
Well,
the better way to go is you put up a buffer, maybe a mound, a landscape buffer, and you plant trees, and that has a far better impact.
Well, it looks better. It does. It's not. Acoustical experts will tell you that won't kill the sound if you're trying to kill the sound, but they'll also tell you that these things, the sound bounces around, and if you live a quarter of a mile roughly away from these things, it actually increases the sound level. So, I mean, the people right in the shadow of these walls are going to get some sound
But do you see the parallel some critics make of, it's just like people building next to a highway with these folks there in Montrose. They built these big homes, buy this big development, and now they're complaining that more development might get closer to their homes.
That's the complaint, too, is that Mayor Roth is protecting a few at the expense of the many. Because let's face it, Montrose is a retail center.
And it is a public road we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, with a minute to go in this broadcast, tell me what it's going to look like once this closes, because people are going to be hit pretty hard pretty fast.
Well, there's going to be obviously enough warning signs so that if you go up to Rothrock, you're going to know that you're going to be stopped. So that's it. And it's probably not going to look very pretty. I think it's the Jersey barriers, the cement barriers that are going to be right there in the middle of the road. So
you can't get in from Cleveland, Massillon, so you got to come up to the big intersection there where people are asking for your money now on the corners. They'll have even more traffic to ask now, I guess, just to point a little more humor. But can we really afford for Montrose to be any busier?
What are you going to do? Who's going to stop it?
No.
Well, and frankly, I live in Montrose, and if you compare it to the Strip, it's a breeze compared to some other retail areas around here, frankly. So but there is no question there's a problem there, especially around rush hour in the area of 18 and 77.
Well, this debate's not going away. I would love to hear from some of those homeowners, and we probably will in the coming weeks. Bob, Phil, Jody, thank you for being with us. Thank you as well, and we invite you to go to newsnight.net to watch this entire broadcast again, or any of our previous broadcasts, as well as the extended editions of some of our interviews. Thanks for being with us. Have a great week, everybody. See you next Friday right here for Newsnight. Good night.